It seems in this day and age, we have a lot of animation studios becoming a challenge to one another to prove themselves to be the very best against all other studios, with long-running ones like Disney still pushing for new animation every year. Even most of their focus goes towards buying and running everything, as well as constant live-action remakes. DreamWorks may have seen as a wild child, but can still make some decently good films and even some great ones in there as well. Sony started off with a rough patch and now sets a standard for the style of animation. Aardman proves you could still make stop motion a reasonable animation style, as you've seen with this year's Oscar winner of Pinocchio. And while they may advertise something to death, Illumination could still make some decent films and respectful box offices, as you can see with one of them being this year's second highest grossing movie of the year. But today, we're talking on the studio that defined a generation and paved the way for the creation of CG animated films, and this is of course with Pixar. Now, they have been set up since 1986, but it was not until 1995 when they released their first full-length CGI animated film of Toy Story. And from there, success continued with classics like Bugs Life, Incredibles, Ratatouille, Up, WALL-E, Inside Out, and my personal favourite, Monsters Inc. Now, to say there's some people out there lately that they see Pixar as losing its charm, and sure, we did have a lot of sequels from them over the last decade, and to others, some of the films in the last year or two have been a little mixed to some. But to me personally, I really enjoy all their film library. Even their lower scoring or less popular ones have stuff I enjoyed, and we'll talk on them in my eventual rewatch-a-thon of all the Pixar films. And today, we're here to talk about their most recent film release of Elemental. Now, I've also known there's a small short beforehand which is on Carl's Day, and to summarize, that short was funny, wholesome, and somehow something that's less than 10 minutes made me cry hard. But now we have the most recent film from them, and the question I have to ask is it good or not? Well, to me personally, I think it's another very charming, funny, and still has that magic and heart that Pixar always seems to have, and I'll explain why in this review.
Water, earth, fire, air.
Now, with most stories made from Pixar universe, they always follows a path of a basic idea, and it usually goes like this. What if a certain person, thing, or object had feelings? Which can be used to describe most of their films, but they would have a building off point with the likes of what did toys do when humans not around, or what if the monster hiding under the bed or in your wardrobe does this as a job, or what if a robot alone on the ruined earth wanted to find love? A lot of the time, they make it work very well. Now, this one does take a bit of the form of the love concept, but on a bit of a unique concept, with the plot being as follows. In a city where fire, water, earth, and air residents live together in harmony, a fiery young woman named Ember and a go-with-the-flow guy named Wade discover something elemental. How much they actually have in common. Now, this does not sound like the most original of plots, but then again, most stories are from the basis of a small handful of options and plots in general, but it had that sense of a forbidden love kind of vibe, and done with a deeper theme of opposites attracting, and also more of a personal story from the director of Peter Sohn, with deeper theme of the community of people moving from faraway foreign land and being ostracized. While many live in harmony, there is a sense of uncertainty and some aggression against certain elements, just because they could cause problems for all the others. But I think that how they tackle it with their deeper themes and concepts make it work a whole lot more. It's a good instance where usually with Pixar's, like, you might think it just has a simpler message, but there's always like a deeper meaning to it all the time. Like, it's like with this one, like, it might be just a love story, but there's a whole deeper meaning about community and sort of, moving to a foreign country. What I give this one, story-wise, I'm looking around 7.5 to 8.5. I think it's a decent enough story. Like, it's a simple enough story, but I think it works well from how they build it out.
You're so hot.
Excuse me?
Now, for a world of characters made up of the different forms of elements, there is a few to go through, and some may have more of a focus compared to others, and I'll try and give them as much of an explanation I can here. So I'll start off with our fiery young female lead of Ember Lumen. Now, she has always respected family and her family's legacy in their shop of the Fire Pit, and she wants to one day run the shop from her ailing father, but with her short temper from pressure, it makes it seem difficult to do so. And when she meets Wade and shows her a life outside of the shop, she discovers that maybe there is more than she wants to do with herself. Maybe she may learn who she really wants to be. Now, I do like her role. That would symbolize the ideal path in life that someone else may have set out for them to follow, but along the way, with coming into their own self, that they may find that is not what they want to be at all, and want to chart their own path forward, but also learning from those that help them along the way. She can be a little placed into she has a temper and is set off easily, but when she learns more about Wade, she finds that more calmer side to her, and I think that's what works well for her character. And as for the other half of the love story, we have Wade Ripple, the go-with-the-flow water element. Now, he would be one that is more outgoing, someone that would find the good in everyone, and who also would be totally fine with showing their emotions, as he tends to cry a lot. And he is the one that shows the possibilities of the world outside of her fire sanctuary to Ember, and even care for her and what she wants to do. And personally, for a love interest, he feels more real than most love interests in other animated films, as he is someone who cares for others and their goals, and will try and make things right and show a more emotional, honest side to things. And personally, I see myself a little bit in Wade. Well, not gonna lie in that case, like, I can see it, but not fully, but you know, you get the gist. And I think having some more characters like this in the future seems like a positive to me. And I think what they do with this character and what they want with the connection with our two main leads is very charming, and I personally really enjoyed how it played out with the two of them, as I feel like they're the two highlights of it, for sure. For the last characters that I feel get the most screen presence in this, it would have to be with Ember's parents of Bernie and Cinder. Now, Bernie and his wife left their old home to start a life for themselves in Element City, and to gain the respect of his own parents, and to see them go through hardships and working from the ground up with building their own home, having a child, and starting a successful business with Bernie as the shop owner and Cinder as a fortune teller like medium, and showing how much they care for their community and everyone around them, besides their distrust of the other elements as they turn their backs on them as well. But those moments of focus with Ember and her parents is kind of really sweet and charming, and there is a moment near the very end with them that actually made me choke up a little bit from the way it was done, because there's a moment in the film that is brought up and then they bring it back up at the end, and it's actually really sweet and wholesome. And I appreciate them doing a focus of a family dynamic that seems more put together instead of a family trauma that some of the other films, mainly from Disney, seem to really do. And, you know, at least given a case of having a focus of, like, you know, a connected family that has its issues, that's for certain. But if it's a case where it's just solely focused on trauma, it gets a bit staged over time. And as for the other family we meet Wade's one a little bit into the film, and I think there is a nice dynamic where they seem to be really close and caring for one another, and would be supportive of their goals and help Ember see more of herself than just her life running the shop or the fire pit. And I live for the designs they do for each of the characters and make them more distinguished, which helps us somewhat know who is who. Also, I just want to bring this up as well. In this family, there is a character named River, who is also confirmed to be the first non-binary character in a Disney or Pixar film, and I'm all for that representation. I think it's a case that they're in this, they're non-binary, and they have a partner, and, you know, respect Pixar for doing that. It's like, it's subtle, but it's not a case where it's like in your face. Now, they're not in much for most of the film, as they appear mainly in one particular point of the film, and then we see them pop again maybe once or twice more before the end, but I feel we could have learned more about them, but I'm sure we'll probably return to this world in the future, maybe in like a sequel or like even a TV series, but it's nice to see kind of a bit more of a wider audience group anyway, but, you know, I hope we see more of them in the future. And now for this character, I really cannot say much, as he do not have the biggest of screen presence, aside maybe three or less scenes, but she seems like an interesting character, and this is with Gale. If they developed it furthermore with the elements of wind and earth, it may help a little bit, but she does help a little near the end for Wade and Ember for one particular nice scene of beautiful animation, and most others that we just see she can have quite the thunderous mood appear out of nowhere, so she kind of feels a little bit relatable to Ember with her like kind of short temper. But similar to the whole thing, I'm sure if they make a follow-up or something like that, I'm sure we'll get more of a development for a character, but what we got from her, I guess it's alright. It's okay. And for the last of the characters is one that pops up a few times in the film and was used for one of the most weirdest promotional campaigns for the film. But anyway, Claude is that small kid character that tries to woo Ember to get her for the dance and all, and it gives off a little bit of a simp energy, and it's kind of weird, but thankfully it only really happens once, maybe twice at most. And like Gale, his element doesn't really get much of a focus, but I'm sure we may return to this world soon, and hopefully we see a bit of a better development of these other two forgotten elements of this movie. Now overall, I think the use of the characters is a decent batch, where I think the standouts are of course the two main leads of Ember and Wade, and some of the others like Ember's parents are a very nice addition how they were approached. It does get affected with some of the others not getting much of a focus, and two of your elements are seen but not really given much of a development either, but I'm sure we'll hopefully see them down the line. Now, to rank the characters, I'm going to give around a 6.5 or 7. I think in case at least the two main leads and Ember's parents kind of help it a bit, but I feel like if they develop a bit more of the other elements, maybe it might have helped a bit more, but that's just my theory.
Welcome to Element City.
Now let's just move from the focus of the characters established in this and talk about the world and how it's presented to us with the animation. Now, I will say that there's one thing that always impressed me with Pixar is that they always seem to really find something new to improve with their craft, and they formed the start of CGI animated films, that they made better physics with like the likes of hair or water, or even the likes of materials in the clothes or characters or objects, you know? It shows that they can create something unique and colorful and bright, or show it through the use of colors, that you can have slightly bright colors to show a sense of warmth, brown and harsh light to show things left in a disarray. There's many ways to show from color and line to make a world feel exciting or grim or wherever they want to express in terms wise of like emotion or something. Now in Elemental we do get this presented in the world of Element City, where we see the differences of the main part of the city compared to the likes of Firetown that are slightly not as colorful in its palette, but has a sense of glow with the characters shown in it, of course, because it's the fire section. The rest of the city that we see, from the busy streets, the transport systems around the towns, or even the high stakes wind tunnel stadiums, there's always something to be seen and helps to make things feel unique for the different elements. I do see some say that this has a similar look to the likes of Zootopia, where there's a different districts and the different animals, but I think both have their issues of seeing small parts of it and could hopefully be explored more in a possible future film or series. But I still think that some will say this animation looks too similar to other Pixar films, but I don't think there's much of a problem with that, and that there is noticeable differences with each of their films in some capacity, where some are small differences compared to others and they're more noticeable, but that is the charm and creative power that Pixar can bring to their films and could do with every film they create. And the same can be said as well with designs of the characters and how each of them work their focus, like each being represented as different. The same can be said about the design of the characters and how they work with their focus, like each being represented as something different, like earth elements represented as trees, shrubs, and sprouting earth matter, wind being shown with like clouds, water in the form of droplets, and fire having a form of a flame shape that could be formed with different emotions. Like for example, when Ember is sad, her light would dim and her head would get smaller, like she's fading out, or hitting off a large blast of fire when annoyed or stressed out, that she lets all of her kind of like basically pent up aggression out. Or the likes of Wei being able to be transported through the pipes, or at a game create a massive wave of fans cheering for their team, or how they could show it could be a little gimmicky but they don't overdo it, and having it to be seen and represented in their styles that feel close to what most would symbolize these elements with. And I gotta give Pixar great praise for their focus on keeping unique while feeling very familiar, but also looking beautiful as always. To visualize the presentation, I'm gonna give it a 9.5, just in case it's a little bit too similar with likes of other films that everyone compares, but like not seeing a lot of the world, but hopefully we'll see more in the future.
Nothing weird going on here.
Just a little pruning.
Alright, I'm not going to delve too much into this section, as I feel this one can go by quick, but I feel the likes of the writing for this movie is good. It does flow well, and some have some nice moments in there and explanations of the world and the characters and everything, and for what it's worth, it's a very decent effort on that end. There's also a case where you don't need to show it through talking, you can show, don't tell, for a case you could just have like visual representation of what they're feeling, for like emotions or like just the visual set pieces. One thing that I did notice in this film and was expecting that they were going to have in this was a lot of jokes or puns relating to the elements. Some work well and some feel a little bit iffy, but it's not to a level where it's in like every line. I just don't cross a point that becomes annoying, so I think it's at that level that's like a fair balance, to say the least. Like it's probably like a good handful of them, maybe every like couple minutes, but like it's not too bad. Like you get some good ones in there, but that's really it. Now, as for the humor side of things, there are some well good jokes in there from the sight gags or even from some of the puns, but some I can see that focus of a joke being attempted and not being executed properly, but there's an attempt made. I appreciate an attempt. I think it's not the level where every joke will have you rolling your eyes, but some are done well, and from what it's worth, they make a valid effort in the jokes. so I can't falter on it. But some of the jokes can be really funny for kids, and some noticeable more adult ones that are either subtle or they straight up say something not so subtle. There's a line in the very end of this movie that if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And I think for like finding that balance does work well in its favors in such a case with writing. So the score wise, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's that good balance. It might be a case with some of the, you know, puns can affect it a little bit or all the jokes land, but you get the idea. Now this one as well, I'm also going to keep brief as well, but we're talking about the music for this film, which I do like for its more unique cultural sounds to it, and is done well from the film's composer of Thomas Newman. There is a mix of some tracks that have a bit of a tech beat to it, while mixing with sort of tones of in an unfamiliar land kind of way, as had that blend of the theme of the film, which was relating to the director's background and moving to a new city and feeling lost. That a sense of the music tone could feel a sense of familiarity and reminds them of where they are from. I could be wrong, but this is how I see the music. I'm not one that like is professional or knows a lot about music, so forgive me. While I could be overthinking it and could be wrong, but I think the music for this film is really done well, and I may listen to it some points now and again if it pops in my feed or if I'm working with some other stuff. So music wise, I give about 7.5. I think 7.5 is a decent number for music. Now, of course, like a lot of other films or media, there is bound to be some problems and critiques, and each section has some form of issue with it that comes along with the film, of course. And I'll do my best to try and give my own reason as to what I give these critiques with. So, I'll start with story. This one is more in the case of a feeling similar to some other forms of love story, but I give it this more of an exception as it's done with the concept of elements that cannot mix. You know, the case of like water element and fire element mix, or fire element's gone, or water turns to steam. You get that gist. Maybe the case of a little one-sided with mostly focused on fire and water, like more the former as well, mostly focused like Ember and her family a good bit, compared to the other two element types, but I guess they can work with what they have. There probably was a case they probably had a story with had the earth and wind characters in there as well, but I guess they will hopefully be more of a better appearance with maybe in like a follow-up film or even a sequel or series. Right, characters. Like I mentioned, I feel some of the characters of this film feel underutilized, as we barely get any focus with air and earth characters compared to like some fire and water. I'm sure they probably had a plan with them, but had to reduce it down for the basis of better structure to the love story, but I'm sure they maybe get a chance in the future. Next, presentation. Similar tones of characters, they may be the case that we don't see a lot of the city. We see hints of it, of course. We see the case with like, you know, the botanical gardens, the main city, we get the stadium, we get Firetown, but that's really it. We don't really get much. We only get like small bits of it. As I mentioned, mainly focused with Firetown, and most areas focus with water and a little with air, but we could have potentially see a whole lot more of the world created Element City. As I mentioned, could be a case we see in a follow-up, but we'll have to see how it goes. Writing and humor. Mainly the case with some of the jokes not really landing now and again, but the other aspect of it is the likes of the puns bordering on a little too overdoing it, but it doesn't reach that far, and as it is, I think it's fine. And lastly, just music. It's mainly on the side of just some tracks are good and some are alright. Soundtrack is good with its blend of music, but the track can be hit or miss with some compared to others. These are all just my little nitpicks anyway. They're just kind of minor ones. Like, if they were sort of like really major ones, they would cause a lot more of a complaint to it, but most complaints I have don't really affect it that much to make it a bad film, so that's really all I have for this.
I'm Wade.
I'm Ember.
So overall, I think that Elemental is a very charming and wholesome little twist on a love story told with the heart and soul of that Pixar charm that they are known for the last 30-40 years. Now I know there's some that say online, they're like, oh, Pixar's fallen off in quality, or their films are not that great, they all feel the same, or they all look the same to me, or stop trying to be progressive with things. These are just some of the concepts I see on the internet all the time with Pixar dying on the internet. Most people just complain about a case that like, oh, Pixar doesn't change their animation style, or Pixar's trying to be progressive. In this case, like, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with a little bit of progression in nowadays in the modern day and age. I'm just saying. But to me, I think them being more forward and telling stories with their messaging and how they tell the stories is what is the most charming aspect with any of them that they make, and it's the reason why I'm always excited for the new releases or release that happen every year. Like, I know there's still a Pixar TV series this year, and there's like, we got a new original next year, and we got a sequel to Inside Out next year, so I'm looking forward to all that. There's a case, is this movie perfect? Not fully, of course. There is its problems, of course, there's its flaws, but I think it's worth the watch if you're still a Pixar fan and can see that the studio still has creative original ideas in mind from talented creators. And of course, this is also one of the biggest success stories from this year, because initially this film opened as one of the weakest openings for a Pixar film, but over the course of the last 2 months, it has turned itself around and is now one of the most biggest success stories for Disney. Outside, of course, like the Marvel films, of course, that, still made a lot of bang for them, and has become the highest earning animated film for the company since the beginning of the pandemic. So I would recommend to check it out now. It's available now on Disney Plus, and experience Pixar's unique take on this forbidden love story and find out for yourself if opposites really can attract. So, to give the final score, I'll give a story 8.5 out of 10, characters I'll give a 7 out of 10, presentation a 9.5 out of 10, writing a 8 out of 10, and music a 7.5 out of 10, which brings a total to about a 40.5 out of 50, which is about an 81%. So, a B+. That's a pretty good score, I think, honestly. It's around the same percentage of what I've seen a lot of scores for anyway. But yeah, well done Pixar, another good hit on your hands. Now, if you enjoyed this review and my ramblings and you've seen this film yourself, let me know what you think of it down below in the comments. I'd love to hear your own thoughts of what you liked and didn't like about this movie. If you liked it, great for you. If you didn't like it, that's totally okay. You're all your opinions, that's totally fine too. And if my review seems a bit weird cynical, let me know what you think of it down below and I can try and improve it in my next few reviews. But as always, I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed the content on my channel and want to see more, simply like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Comment below all your thoughts down below and share it around to people if you know already. And, stay being wonderful people, because you all are wonderful people to me. And have a great day every day, and I'll see you all in the next review. So, take care everybody. Goodbye.